perspective presented by the New Orleans Secular Humanist Association, following our few principles of humanism.
We're committed to the use of science and reason for understanding the universe and for solving human problems. We're skeptical of untested claims of knowledge, but we're open to new ideas.
We are concerned with securing justice and fairness in society and in ending intolerance and discrimination. We are committed to the total separation of religion and government.
We affirm humanism as a realistic alternative to the theologies of despair and the ideologies of violence. We reject the concept of an afterlife and believe in living a full and rewarding life here and now.
We value and respect each individual's right to judge and lead their lives according to their own position, as long as it's respectful of other people, living in a free society.
We hope you enjoy today's program and others in the weeks to follow. Hello, and thanks for watching our program again. I'm Harry Greenberger, and I'm the host for this show. And today we have a very interesting guest who is a member of our organization, and he is a professor of philosophy at the University of New Orleans. I'd like to introduce Mark Phillips. And Mark, thank you for being here with us.
Well, thank you for having me.
One of the things that Mark has done that we really have a great deal of appreciation for is that he has done the work so that the University of New Orleans would sponsor a Darwin Day on an annual basis. And it's curious that this sponsorship is not coming from the biology department, but from the philosophy department where Mark teaches. But Mark, tell us something about Darwin Day.
Well, it's an annual event we have to sort of encourage speakers from different walks of life and different universities in the area and elsewhere to share some of the things that they're involved in. It used to be a sort of a chance to read papers, but now it's become something a little more engaged than that.
Well, why is New Orleans the only place where this is celebrated, and why is it a cause for particular commemoration?
No, it's not even close to the only place. There are hundreds and hundreds of Darwin Days everywhere in the world, and we do ours a little late. February 12th is Darwin's birthday, and this year it's part of our spring break, but normally it's too cold in February to have a Darwin Day anyway, so we just wait till the most convenient time for everyone closer to spring.
All right, but now you've participated in numerous past Darwin Days. Mm-hmm. What sort of presentations have been made? Well,
we've had some, like I said, some local folks, and we've also had some pretty big name people. Since I've been involved in it, things have been geared more toward the evolutionary psychology end of the spectrum. Not as much biology, anthropology, and the like as one might hope.
Well, is it still necessary to convince people that evolutionary biology, that humans have a result of these millennia of evolution? Do people still have to be convinced of that?
Well, I run into lots of people for whom that's a new idea, so I think so.
Including students at the university?
Sure.
How do we account for that when it seems to be established science?
We have a natural tendency, I'd say, even to think of mental phenomena as exempt from the natural order of things.
I'm not sure I understood what the mental phenomena. Are you talking about people who are convinced that we have a soul, which is something separate and apart from our evolutionary bodies?
Yeah, but I'd even suggest that people who aren't traditionally religious have a tendency, the same tendency, to think that they have minds that are not products of their bodies. So that the theist and the atheist are doing some version of that.
Well, now, there is a local Louisiana doctor who has done a great deal of research into mind or soul as separate from the body, and has written a bestseller book called Evidence of the Afterlife, which relies upon his hundreds or thousands of near-death experience reports from people. Now, is there, from your point of view, is there possible validity to a mind or a soul or a being or an essence that can exist apart from the human body?
I don't have any evidence for it. I haven't died yet myself, and I'm grateful for that. Those people who've had near-death experiences, I imagine, I imagine there's a large difference between near-death and after-death. And so near-death experiences wouldn't necessarily give you an afterlife.
Well, a lot of that would depend upon how they determine when you're dead. Your heart can stop beating, and your brain still gets enough blood that your brain is still alive. And so, are you dead when your heart stops, or are you dead when your brain stops?
Right, exactly.
And if they're measuring it from the heart and the brain still has some activity, you're not dead. I believe that this man who has written the book, who's also going to address our organization, I believe that he is of the opinion that these people were in fact dead and then returned to life with a memory of the experience. Now, I would be inclined to say there is some reasonable explanation. Should we reject that concept completely as a philosopher?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. It's up to me to say, but it does seem as if we're just. It does seem that we would like the hope, or that a lot of us would like the hope of an afterlife, and so something that sort of suggests that it might be coming later is what someone like that seems to be
hoping for.
Well, hoping for and sort of setting things up for. In other words, we've been there. Who have had these near-death experiences, we've seen this other world, and that's where we're headed after we die. I would say if it gives solace, then I don't know that I'd have any problem with someone thinking that, but to me it would just, if somebody said, well, we buried them or we incinerated them, and then lo and behold, a few days later they came back, it'd probably be something quite different.
Well, it is among atheists and secular humanists, there are some who would like to relieve everybody of what is considered a false conclusion about a separate soul and the supernatural. There are others of us who say, as you just said, if such concept is comforting and a solace to them, let them have it. Now, there is a difference between individuals who are religious and churches. And we, especially formalized secular humanist groups, have a lot of criticism and problem with organized religion, as opposed to people who may say that they're spiritual. Now, you teach philosophy, and you know what the great thinkers through the ages have, where they have come, what conclusions they have come to. Are there some of them who support the concept of supernatural existences, and some who do not?
Sure. There's plenty on both sides. I guess I'm inclined to suggest to both camps, the theists and the atheists, that they're doing something similar, more similar than especially theists. Well, I would say, I guess I should say more similar than atheists especially believe, because atheists usually think that they're materialists and they're very much against soul talk, and that they can't be doing anything like the theists themselves. And I suspect that that's not the case. I suspect that atheists are, when talking of themselves as having minds, doing a secular version of.
Well, now I don't know which courses of philosophy you teach, but you're getting these young people who apparently, at least they've had their high school education, and you may even teach advanced courses, but how do you present it? You say this is what this philosopher thinks, and this is what this philosopher says. Make up your own mind? Is that generally what you would do?
Sure. It's not for me to tell anyone what to think. And the idea is not necessarily to say, here's what Plato or Aristotle or Descartes or Hobbes believed. It's more, here's a bunch of different ways of thinking. Now see how well you might do it.
Now, but does it come up that these students say, well, those philosophers don't agree with my religion, what I'm taught in my religion?
Sure.
How do you handle that?
It's not a problem for me as a teacher, because I simply tell them what other people have thought. And if they don't agree with it, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Well, some years back, I took a course out at UNO in your department, a course in ethics, because there is the accusation that atheists, since we do not get our morality from on high, we're anything goes. Who tells us what's right and wrong? And I wanted to know what the philosophy department and the philosophers had to say about ethics.
That we might tell people what's right and wrong?
Well, what is the study of ethics?
Well, it's a study of why certain behaviors, human behaviors only really, are considered right or wrong, moral, immoral, etc. And because we're capable of certain types of behavior that require deliberation, that we at least feel, free will and determinism debates aside, that we could do otherwise or could have done otherwise.
If you have freedom of choice.
Right, in other
words,
free will. The assumption is there that there is such a thing, and that humans can deliberate about those things, and so we're the one species that can be ethical. It's really just a discussion of what would make a behavior or an action moral, immoral, good, evil, etc.
I was going to ask, do you see a distinction between ethics and morality?
Well, I mean, you could say I live by a certain ethic and use the word ethic to say a creed, a dogma, etc. But being ethical or being moral is.
Is it interchangeable? To me, it would be.
In most people's uses, it is.
All right. Well, now. So then what is the basis for a non-believer? Because the believers get their morality from the written word, whether it's the Quran or the Old Testament and the Ten Commandments. It's written down for them. Where do atheists find their morality?
Well, I'm assuming that it's not the same for all atheists anymore than it is for all theists, but I think I would suggest, based on what I said earlier about the similarity between minds and souls, that something like a separation of church and state that applies to theists applies to atheists as well. If I have it in my head that I'm going to do a certain something that I think is right, and if the majority of people don't think it's right, then it's not right. and I have to sort of prioritize public concerns, rules, laws, etc., over my own claims about what's really right.
If I understood what you said, you should accept the opinion of the majority?
Yes. In other words, if I said something like, I've decided to blow something up because I think that what the people are doing in that building, for some reason I'm thinking of, say, something like Timothy McVeigh. I think the government's gotten out of control and I would blow the building up. If I did it for secular reasons, it would be wrong for the same kinds of reasons that it would be wrong for me to fly planes into the World Trade Center.
Because the majority would say it's wrong? And that's what I'm trying to get at. Who makes that decision?
We do.
For instance, at one time before the Civil War, the majority thought slavery was moral. Mm-hmm. Did that make it right?
A certain majority might have.
Well, let's say there was a majority who fought a war over it, mm-hmm. who said there's nothing wrong with this, mm-hmm. that it's in the Bible, that it says we can do it. Mm-hmm. Did the fact that the majority had that position, did that make it moral and right?
The majority that fought and won claimed that what they did was right. And this is usually a very unphilosophical opinion, one that the sophists had long before Plato ever came along, and that is that majority rules. And we seem to have gone back to it for lack of any sort of philosophical or religious foundationalism.
Well, when people ask me where an atheist gets his morals, his ethics, or decision as what's right and wrong, mm-hmm. I say it's from accumulated experience through decades that certain behavior works to the benefit of the person, of his immediate group, maybe a larger group, his whole town, or maybe his whole country. Mm-hmm. Certain things have shown to be beneficial. Mm-hmm. Other things have shown through experience to be harmful. And so if you choose the ones that have proven to be beneficial, that is the basis for your morality. Mm-hmm. Now, this has nothing to do with majority opinion.
Well, let's just say beneficial for whom? If I were to say it's beneficial for me to do something, but it's not beneficial for that larger group, what I'm suggesting is that that group's interest should trump mine.
For instance, let's say that you say it is bad to murder an innocent person. That would apply for you as an individual. As why would you murder? It would apply for your family. Would apply for your community. Mm-hmm. It would, I think, apply for your country. Don't go out and kill innocent people. So it holds up. And that is what I would say is a reasonable, scientific, logical basis for determining right and wrong, because mm-hmm. I don't see how you can live a life without having some measures of what's right and what's wrong. I think the people who don't are probably psychopaths. What do you think?
Well, based on something like the recent Tucson shooting, that it seems like a legitimate characterization. I guess I just mean that scientific agreement is just that. If I said something like, I've got a group of physicists together and they've agreed that string theory is really the case, then I wouldn't be able to get beyond the agreement of those physicists to get to how things really are. That's been the attempt in philosophy and religion, that I could somehow transcend empirical observation and agreement among those observers. And so what I mean by prioritizing the majority is simply that if we've had experiences like you're talking about, and collectively we've decided that murder is wrong, then it won't be justifiable for me as an individual to say to that group, you're mistaken, murder's the way to go.
Well, if we're talking about morality being related to largest numbers, and And it may well be, I'm not certain about these figures, it may well be that it is the majority opinion that that humans came through this creationism, that humans were created in our present state all at once 6,000 years ago. Mm-hmm. Large numbers of people accept that as the truth. Mm-hmm. Does that make it the truth?
Well, no, exactly. That's been the complaint that we've had ever since Plato. The idea that we could draw a distinction between belief and knowledge. There's a whole bunch of people who believe something, and I always use for my students, and it's getting really dated now. I say 50 million Elvis fans, can't be wrong is the way of putting it. But I say can be wrong, and it used to be funny, but no one knows who that is anymore. Plato tried to make a distinction, and we've been trying to make it all along, between just having a belief and knowing, being really right. We like to keep that intuition now and say, just because a bunch of people think that the world is 6,000 years old doesn't make it 6,000 years old. Believing something cannot make it the case.
All right.
What I'm suggesting is that distinction doesn't hold. That when we argue between beliefs, we're not arguing between two different types of things, belief and knowledge, where it's a contest between different beliefs. So when theists and atheists go at it, it's the same kind of thing as when liberals and conservatives go at it. It's just a disagreement over which ways of talking and thinking about things.
The people who believe that Jesus Christ was the Son of God and died and came back to life, is that a belief, or is that the opposite?
Well, that's just it. I'm suggesting that we lose that age-old philosophical distinction between belief and knowledge, and just say that is a belief, and so is mine or ours, that things are other than that.
All right. Well, I got you away from a topic that we really were going to talk about, which has to do with Charles Darwin, Darwin Day, and the events. Mm-hmm. Tell us about when will the Darwin Day be commemorated this year at UNO, and can you tell us whether you already have some speakers lined up?
Yeah, we're going to have 4 speakers on March 26th this year. We didn't have a Darwin Day last year, and it had to do with the funding issues that I'm sure you're familiar with, the LSU system,
and of course, yeah,
possible merging and cutting faculty and all that. We didn't have one last year. This year, we have a speaker coming from Tulane. A paleontologist is going to speak to us from Tulane. We have someone coming from Loyola's English department about literature by both the Darwins, Erasmus and Charles, and literature of that time. And then I'm going to give a talk on the topic I was alluding to a second ago, about how we should think about belief as cultural politics. And then Vic Stinger, who you're familiar with, is coming from the University of Colorado to give a talk really in opposition, basically, to what I'm saying.
But Vic Stinger has a well-read book. Well, I'm trying to recall. What would you recall the title of his book?
Yeah, God, the Failed Hypothesis.
All right. Now that date is March 27th.
March 26th. It's on a Saturday.
I was going to ask you. It's on a Saturday.
It should go from about 10 to 3.
And what kind of audiences have you had out at UNO for prior Darwin Days? So, I mean, is it students or students plus, or who's there?
There's usually 100 to a couple hundred people, and they come from UNO and other local universities, and we have a pretty good turnout. What I would like to see are people, because it's open to the general public, I'd like to see people coming from outside universities generally. It would be nice if we could get either high schools or people who are not involved in formal education at all.
Which would require some advanced publicity.
Yeah, some advertising.
Will the UNO Public Relations Department, I think in the past they've done very little to publicize Darwin Day, You think you can get them to work on that?
I try. I'm not sure that the fault lies with them, because I've also not had a lot of success with publications in the area. I think that the word is still has certain connotations. I think
the word Darwin.
The word Darwin is a little troublesome. I'm thinking of changing his name or something so that we can.
Well, you couldn't very well call it Evolution Day. That wouldn't help, would it?
That doesn't help either. It might not be bad to promote the speakers and let the Darwin enthusiasts come to the event without necessarily pushing the Darwin.
Well, if there's some way that our organization can help promote it, we of course would be happy to do so.
Yeah, and the secular humanists have been a big help in that.
We, in fact, our group were responsible for the first Darwin Day in New Orleans, which was at Tulane University. And after that, UNO stepped up to say they would be glad to sponsor the Darwin Day, which they did. It was the graduate department took on that responsibility, and then it kind of just fell on your shoulders.
Well, and that's one reason why I like to see Tulane and Loyola and any of the other schools in the area be involved.
Well, they should be.
Well,
and I agree with you that the general public, and I think many of them, if they knew about it, would be there, because even if they just want to learn more about evolution.
That's right.
Which may not be what the speakers are saying, but
well, it's free and open to the public, and we usually have food, and it's in the alumni center in the lake side of the campus.
Yes, so this is really like not all day, but morning sessions and afternoon sessions, and you take a break for lunch, and
exactly,
and then the people come back. Yeah. Well, we have a couple minutes left. I'm going to let you, whether you want to talk about philosophy, Darwin, religion. What would you like our folks watching to hear?
Well, I don't know that I have a message per se, but I'm currently working on something where I try to get people to think of the debate between the religious and the secular society as one where we're just trying to work out things politically. So rather than calling each other wrong or heartless or crazy, I'm hoping that we can get to where we think of each other as humans that are trying to muddle along as best we can, and that the name calling about God can be as
benign?
No, as problematical or antagonistic as anything else.
All right. Now you say you're working on something.
I'm working on a book right now. It goes slowly because I teach a lot.
Yes.
But I'm working on a book that is an attempt to show what I think is a misunderstanding by atheists of theism.
Well, that's very interesting, and I do understand that writing a book is no easy project. I want to thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
I want to thank the folks who are watching our show for being here, and remind you that we're around every week and try to bring you some interesting guests.